Right, good morning, everyone. We'll give it a couple of minutes just as more people are joining. But for those of you that have joined, welcome, and thank you for joining us on this sunny Friday morning. I think I saw Ruth there. Nice to see you, Ruth.
Morning, Alison. How are you?
Morning. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, very well, thank you. Looking forward to hearing more about this.
Well, hopefully, yeah, we'll have some interest from friends far and wide across the country able to start contributing to our evidence base. Okay, well, maybe we'll start with some of the housekeeping, even though we do, I think, have a few people still on their way in from the waiting room. Um, so, yeah, good morning, everybody. First of all, just to note, we are recording this session today. So just bear that in mind. But also, that means that this will be available to you. It will be automatically sent out once the session is finished because you've signed up to attend. We have your contact information to be able to do that. But it will also be uploaded to our website and to our public YouTube channel. And the slides will also be available to you as well. So please feel free to sit back and not have to make lots and lots of notes. Be also aware that we will be taking questions throughout, but only in the chat while we're talking. And we will have 20 minutes at the end for Q&A if you want to then speak and mention any questions verbally. Okay, so if we can just slip onto the next slide, Ruby. You will see perhaps in the videos that we've got switched on here, there's a range of us here today from the DBAA project based at Exeter. So there's myself, I'm a professor in the business school at the University of Exeter, and I'm the project director of developing business aware academics. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the project, just talk more generally about what we're trying to do. And then we're going to move on to Kate Ellis, who is our research fellow based again here in the team at Exeter, who's going to talk about the aim of the focus groups and the logistics and ethics of running those groups if you are successful. And then Ruby is our project coordinator. So she's going to be talking through the application process, so the nuts and bolts of how you actually apply and how we're going to be looking at selecting those organisations that will be able to take this forward. And then, as I said earlier, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, 20 minutes, where you can ask any questions you would like about the opportunity, and we will do our best to come back to you. So just a reminder, while we're talking through all of this, if you could just keep your mics muted, that would be fantastic. Please excuse my dog in the background if she comes in at some point, which she inevitably will do, hopefully not for very long a disturbance. And then, as I say, there will be lots of opportunity for you to question us. Okay, so Ruby, if we can get started. So we are developing business aware academics. We're a national project, though we're based at Exeter. We have partners across the whole of the country. We have 4 years worth of funding from Research England to look at preparing academics predominantly at the earlier stages of their careers. So we're looking at PGRs and ECRs in terms of their readiness to engage beyond academia. So we all know, we talk a lot at the moment about research impact, but we know that for research to have the best possible impact, it needs to be built in very early in the research design stage, not just added on as an afterthought following the completion and publication of results. So we are really thinking about how we can build people's confidence, shift mindsets, and make sure that people are really thinking about not only how they might perhaps commercialize their research or spin out companies, but more fundamentally, and perhaps more commonly for most people, think about how they collaborate with industry, but also policymakers and all kinds of people outside of universities to make sure that their research is as impactful as it possibly can be, but with also lots of other advantages, such as being able to jointly apply for research funding. So, as I say, we have a diverse range of partners and collaborators. You'll see in the graphics on the left, some of our partners are our core academic partners, and then others, we have industrial partners and representative organisations. And as we work through the project, we are bringing on board new partners all the time. We have a couple of exciting announcements to make over the next couple of weeks where we're just finalising those partnerships. And to begin with, I mean, we are nearly 2 years now into the project. You might be thinking, well, why haven't we seen much in terms of provision? And that's because we are very much an evidence-based project. We want to make sure that what we actually offer in terms of provision, whether that's training or networking opportunities, are really based on what we know might work best. So we are working to identify gaps in current provision. We're trying to find examples of good practice. We are exploring the barriers, the enablers and motivators to engagement beyond academia for particularly early career researchers, but we're looking across all of the different career stages as we're gathering that evidence. And as part of what we're doing as well, we're building a campaign on the benefits of academia industry engagement, because we need that broad understanding of why we're doing what we're doing is important. So as I say, we're bringing that evidence together. We are starting to now plan out that programme of initiatives for our PGRs and ECRs across the whole country. Next slide, please, Ruby. So just to sum up the project aims overall, it is about inspiring and empowering those researchers that are very early in their career to engage beyond academia. We want to make sure that the impact of research is increased, and we want to open doors to diverse career pathways. We know, after all, that around 70% of people who complete PhDs in the UK don't end up going on to academic careers, but actually end up in all sorts of other career pathways. And sometimes they feel that's a failure, and we really don't want them to feel that that's a failure. We want them to understand the full breadth of knowledge and skills that they're developing while they're a researcher in a university can be deployed in really interesting ways outside of the sector as well. So by engaging with us and gaining confidence in working with industry and working in industry, they can really see that full array of different pathways that they could follow if they end up leaving academia. We really want to design, trial and evaluate an evidence-led programme of training and networking, as I've already mentioned, and it's really about those mindsets. We are not, as a project, training people in how to actually run a collaboration, how to spin out a company, how to commercialise their research. It's about shifting that mindset beyond just thinking about the traditional work that an academic does in generating publications and then that next grant application. It's really important for us to bring people together as this project. So one whole work stream of the project is around networking. It's around bringing people from academia together with people beyond academia to connect as people, to connect, to have discussions, to share interests, to really think about how they might work collaboratively in all kinds of different ways to address the societal, economic and environmental challenges that we as a population and indeed globally are having to face on a daily basis. And in the end, as well as having that sustainable programme of activities to take forward at the end of the project, we want to be able to make policy recommendations that remove the barriers to collaboration and engagement. And these can be really fundamental things like how we reward and recognise academics. Next slide, please, Ruby. Now, as we're supporting our PGRs and ECRs, really this is going to take place across 3 different main areas. We want to inspire them. We want to persuade them that engaging beyond academia brings huge benefits for themselves, but also for others. It isn't just those individuals and their careers that are going to benefit here. It really is the organisations that they collaborate with, society more broadly. And we're doing that through case studies. So if you have a look onto our website, I don't know if someone could possibly from the team post a link to our website into the chat just for ease of reference. You'll see some case studies that we're developing. We are really interested in finding further case studies from across the UK. We've drawn very heavily to start with, inevitably on Exeter and our fascinating work that goes on by our researchers there. But if you know anyone within your organisation who is at an early career stage and is working really meaningfully with external collaborators, then we are really interested in hearing from you, and we would love to create a case study of those. We then want to develop them. This is where the training comes in. We want to build those researchers' confidence. We want to help them identify areas for potential collaboration. We want to understand what those business needs are and to help them understand what business needs are. And for those of you that have been following our work, you'll have seen that we've recently been collaborating with the CBI, who ran a survey on our behalf, and we have a report available on our website which gives you really rich insight into what industry wants from academia and how they think that there might be a whole broad range of things that they could work with researchers and universities more broadly on. And then we want to engage them. We actually want them to get practicing, working. We've just recently brought on board a new member of the team who's going to be working with us and researchers to develop that confidence of facilitating that networking, of allowing them to go out into industrial workspaces, into policy workspaces, to get out of that comfort zone of academia, to really gain that confidence in understanding how to work with others. As I say, getting out of that comfort zone, really pushing the boundaries, is good for them as individuals, it's good for others, it's good for everybody. Okay, next one, please. This is just a visual, really, just to show some of the exciting work we've done. I mentioned those case studies. We have Faye there on the top right, and we have Jack on the left. These are our initial sort of poster boys and girls of researchers doing some amazing work with partners outside of academia. And then just a reminder there as well to sign up to our mailings. I think we're going to have a link in just a moment, but that weekly readings roundup we post on our Blue Sky account. Again, maybe we could pop a link into that. And our regular newsletter that goes around as well will be able to keep you up to date in the broad breadth of what we're doing as a project beyond this funding call. Next one, please, Ruby. So when we're working with business, we really want to make sure that everything we do is of mutual benefit. We're very much in thinking about the work we do as a project, it's seeking alignment with industry priorities. That again has come out of the CBI work that we've done. We want to draw on external expertise and networks. So again, even though I know you're here to hear about the funding call today, but if you have any other networks that you think that we should be connecting in with, we will be very grateful for those contacts and introductions. We want to aim for maximum economic and societal impact of the work that we do, and more importantly, perhaps the work that researchers are doing. We really want to get them thinking outside of that bubble of academia. I know there's some amazing work that has been going on, obviously, for decades by many researchers in universities, but we still have lots of people who are not looking at external engagement as part of what they do. And we really think, particularly in the humanities, but perhaps some of the social sciences, there is much more work we can do to encourage people to look outside of the university for potential impact. We're looking at new pathways to impact and talent pipelines as well. So lots of the businesses that we're talking to are talking about needing to have rich talent pipelines, particularly into senior level roles within their companies. The National Centre for Universities and Business, one of our collaborators on the project, have put out some really exciting reports about the potential of working between academia and industry. But a lot of that requires that mindset shift much earlier on in people's careers. So we're really thinking through how we can help people within universities, but also, as I say, working to meet those skills needs in industry, whether those people go on to work full time in industry or stay in academia and collaborate. I've already mentioned about the importance of mutual value as well. That's at the heart of everything we do. And again, just that reminder of the CBI work that you might want to have a look at. Ruby. Okay, thank you. Working in partnership with universities, again, obviously, we are based in a university. We have lots of university collaborators. You'll have already seen we have named partners, but we are really wanting to reach out now more broadly to a greater number of university partners. We want to identify that existing good practice and expertise. So if you know something is going on really in your particular context that you think we should know about, then please let us know. That might be training within your doctoral colleges. It might be training from your innovation teams. It might be happening within disciplines. We have done the best we can to try and map some of the amazing work that's been going on already, but a lot of it is really invisible unless you have that conversation with people within a university. So to build up that strong evidence base, as well as the focus groups that we hope you will apply for funding to run, we are really interested in hearing about examples, as I say, of particular bits of training and support that you might offer PGRs and ECRs. There are challenges. So we know there are challenges in universities looking at promotion criteria, for example, that don't necessarily reward and recognise non-traditional academic activity. We are working to challenge that. We are lobbying various organisations through our work, and we really want to build up a case that it is worth supporting people in these sorts of things. Ultimately, we want a sustainable set of provision to go forward. We want every university that you sit in to have access to some of the resources that we develop through the project, and to be taking those policy recommendations and implementing them across the higher education sector in the UK. And we really also, one of our core research questions is, do these sorts of things work better at a discipline-specific level, a sector-specific level, or can actually they be fairly generic? And of course, there are advantages in bringing people together across disciplines to work on some really tricky problems as well. So we'll be testing all those sorts of things out, and some of these things will be the subject of future funding calls when we'll be going out to ask other universities to run stuff for the project, report back, and of course we will fully evaluate that and feed that into our evidence base to make those recommendations at the end of the project. Next slide, please, Ruby. So just a prompt again here to join our mailing list. You've heard a little bit today about what we're going to be doing and what we have done already. If you join our mailing list by scanning that QR code or clicking on the link in the chat, you can, that is the best way basically to stay in touch with what we're doing. On the left-hand side there, again, I think have we already got a link? Maybe we're about to put a link in to the researcher survey. That is live, that's running until the 30th of May. So if you know researchers, if you are a researcher yourself, this is a really critical survey to get a better understanding of the barriers, enablers and motivators to engaging beyond academia. We want to hear from as broad a range of researchers as possible, and we will be very grateful if you could circulate that. And the next slide, please. So just before I move on to Kate, again, just to reiterate, it is really important for us that everything we do is evidence-driven. That's the real core importance of this call, to get that insight from researchers within your contexts. We want those case studies, so please do, if you have any understanding of what's going on within your organisation, that the people that you can direct us to, that would be fantastic. We're constantly now starting to identify areas for innovation and experimentation. We are going to be trialling over the next 2 years all kinds of training and networking approaches, and this call is very much about extending those collaborations. So I think this is the point at which I hand over to Kate, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of how to apply in this particular opportunity.
Thanks, Alison. Hi, I'm Kate Ellis. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow on the project. I've been working on the project for just over a year, and I'm overseeing the work stream that's focused on building the project's evidence base. As Alison has said, it's really important to us that the initiatives that we design through this project are evidence-led and addressing real challenges on the ground. And the literature that exists in this field tends to focus largely on those high-level strategic and policy issues. And while those are important, of course, for us, evidence-led means taking our steer from the stakeholders most directly involved and affected by the findings. So the researchers, and particularly doctoral and early career researchers. And early conversations that we've had with these researchers and researcher developers suggest that there's a far more nuanced and individualised set of issues than comes across in the literature alone. And those are the issues that make us think about how we create the conditions to support our researchers to engage with non-academic organisations. And so we're really excited to be able to offer some funding to run focus groups in multiple spaces across the country that are designed to consider some of these issues in depth. And we're hoping that this snowball sampling approach will enable us to have dedicated conversations with hundreds of doctoral and early career researchers to ensure that we're being led by a rich and diverse evidence base. And we also hope that these focus groups will give you the opportunity to capture the nuances among your own institution's researchers in this area. And I'll come back to that later. Next slide, please, Ruby. So in particular, we're aiming to gather data that we can analyse to seek to understand what does or what would motivate researchers to engage more with non-academic organisations, what the barriers are to that work, and what the enablers are that we can leverage to increase researchers' readiness to engage with diverse opportunities when they arise. And it's coming back to that mindset and that readiness. So themes of these focus groups will include challenges in engaging with non-academic organisations, drivers of engagement, incentivising engagement, existing support mechanisms, because we know that there are some really good examples and some good practice across the sector already, and cultural and structural change. What do we need to do to make sure that we're providing sustainable recommendations? Why do academic researchers choose to engage, or why do they choose not to engage with non-academic organisations? And we're taking a broad view about who those organisations might be. So they might be within the private sector in business and industry, but they may equally be public sector organisations, charities, NGOs, policymakers, and so on. And we'd like the focus groups to also take that broad view of what a non-academic organisation is. How do and how should researchers think about the language they use when they're talking about their work to diverse audiences? And equally, how confident do they feel when they're in conversation with those from other sectors? How do researchers view the values, the risks and the benefits of these interactions? And how do they feel that they are perceived by other sectors? And we've had some really interesting conversations around that already. And what do researchers believe that institutions can do to support such engagement? So these are the people that are doing the work that we're trying to encourage to have these conversations. What do they need? And we don't want to assume that we know. And then ultimately, we'll bring the data from these focus groups into our overarching data set, triangulating it with data from the surveys that we're already carrying out with the researchers, with the CBI, and we've got one due to go out soon with researcher developers as well. To generate recommendations that inform policy or practice. So we really want to optimise the insights that we gather to shape support mechanisms, training and policy level, policy changes at organisational and sector level to really try to increase that cross-fertilisation of research and innovation between academia and other sectors. Next slide, please, Ruby. So what will these focus groups look like in practice? And it's worth noting at this point as well, once we know who we'll be partnering with to run these focus groups, we'll hold another information session where we can really get into the nuts and bolts of the detail. So don't worry if you don't catch it all today. We would like the focus groups to run for up to 2 hours, including a break, so approximately 90 minutes of discussion time. And in our experience, this gives a chance for participants to have meaningful conversations and to cover all the discussion topics, but also trying to avoid some undue fatigue. If on the day there's an appetite and a capacity to keep talking, that would be amazing. Equally, if conversation peters out just under the 2 hours, we'll leave that to the discretion of the facilitator, but we'd like applications to plan for a 2-hour session, please. In terms of group composition, for this round of funding, we want to hear from researchers at the beginning of their careers, so doctoral and early career researchers, and we're happy for ECRs to self-identify as such. We haven't put our own parameters on that other than being early in their academic career. We're asking for applications to run focus groups for up to 30 participants, 30, but to make sure that every institution has a really rich data set, but we would expect for that larger group to then be split up into smaller subgroups or smaller tables, and we found that up to 10 participants per group is ideal for balanced discussion, to make sure everyone's had a chance to speak, and it also makes the transcription and the data management a bit more manageable when we get to that end of things. We'd like to hear from a diverse group of academic researchers, so we're asking you to cast your nets wide across your institution in terms of discipline and career trajectory, and indeed actually in terms of prior experience with engaging with non-academic organisations. We found already that some of the most profound insights come from researchers who've never even contemplated working with non-academic organisations before, and who might be talking or even thinking about it for the first time while they're sat around the focus group table. So we're really not putting any restrictions on that level of experience. We're anticipating that you will recruit your own focus groups, and we're happy to be guided by you about how you do that, because you know your own institutional structures and your own researchers better than we do. But we will have templates for email invites and things that we can provide when we confirm the funding allocation. The funding awards, and this is important, the funding awards are intended for in-person focus groups only. And we would need a facilitator for each of those small groups within your focus groups. If you have 3 tables of 10, 3 facilitators, 1 per table, to manage the group dynamics and to keep that discussion on track. In terms of who that facilitator is, it's likely to depend largely on your own context. And again, we're happy to be flexible. So it might be a research developer, it could be someone from the knowledge exchange team, it could be a researcher, including an early career researcher, but there are some ethical considerations around researchers researching other researchers that you would need to be aware of if that were the case, and we can point you to some resources on that if that would be helpful. And you can also use the funding to bring in an external facilitator if you don't have appropriate in-house experience. But when you're thinking about who is going to facilitate your groups, I'd ask you to be aware of any power dynamics in that group to make sure that participants won't perceive that they've been coerced into joining discussions, or equally that they won't feel that they will be treated detrimentally if they choose not to participate. And I think this is particularly important given the precarity in the sector at the moment, so I'd ask you to give some thought to that when preparing your applications. And in terms of the resources, so as well as the facilitator, you'll need a note taker for each table of the focus group, who should not be another participant. So the note taker is required to keep a record of participant numbers in the order in which they speak. It's a bit of a technicality around how we're going to transcribe those groups later on. And I won't go into too much detail now, but just to make sure that you do have a note taker available. You will need an audio recording device for each table and access to a laptop or another device which will enable you to upload the recording to SharePoint after the group is finished. If you don't have access to dictaphones within your institution, you can use the funding to hire the equipment. It won't be appropriate for facilitators or note takers to use their own personal mobile phones for recording for data management. And then, yes, as this is a formal research activity, there's certain paperwork that we also need to have in place to meet our obligations under ethics approval. So we'll provide you with participant information sheets, consent forms, and a question set to ensure a parity of discussion. But obviously there'll be freedom within that to follow conversation as it evolves. Next slide, please, Ruby. I've just mentioned those ethical considerations. I've been elbow deep in ethics for months. It's all I can think of. But as we noted at the outset, so the focus groups are being convened as part of that wider Developing Business Aware Academics project. And because of that, they are subject to research ethics governance. And just a reminder that when we know who we'll be partnering with, we'll hold another information session to go into the technicalities in more detail. So I've kept them quite high level for now, just for ease of reference and to avoid information overload. If you do have any questions about the detail, I'm happy to answer them offline as well afterwards. So this funding call has full approval from the University of Exeter Business School's Ethics Committee, and the application reference number for that is on the slide. So we've received a favourable decision to cover all aspects of the call that we're talking about today, including the complexities of data collection by a research partner. But having said that, we would advise that you check with your own institutions about whether you would also need separate institutional ethics approval at your end. But if you let them know that Exeter has already considered it in detail and approved it, I would imagine this should be quite light touch. Informed consent is paramount, and if I could only say one thing today, it would be that so participants must give their explicit consent to join in the focus group discussions, and we'll provide the information sheets and the consent forms that you can upload with your recruitment call or send to participants at the time that they register to attend the session so they can read it through in advance. And I'll be happy to go through any queries directly as well with potential participants, and my email address is at the bottom of the information sheet. And again, I'll go through the detail of signing the consent forms and so on at a later stage, but the takeaway really is that we must have explicit written consent from every participant before we start collecting data from them. Participation in the focus groups must be voluntary, and participants must be able to withdraw from participating at any time, even if it's partway through the focus group session. Participants also have the right to withdraw their individual contributions from the transcript of the focus group at any time, and this is all detailed in the information sheets that we'll send you, and again we'll go through in detail in due course with our confirmed partners. The data governance around the focus groups is really important, especially as we're working with partners. And the institutions that will be partnering with us will be required to sign up to a partnership agreement that contains the details around how we'll collect, manage and store that data. The data will be owned by the University of Exeter as the project lead, and we'll do all the transcription and all the analysis of the data for you. All you will need to do is to upload the audio recording of the focus group to that secure SharePoint folder as soon as possible at the end, and we can do the rest. And each partner, this is important as well, each partner will have their own secure folder controlled by access permission. So you'll only be able to see the data for your own institution and nobody else will be able to see your own data. And we'll delete the audio recordings as soon as we finalise the transcript as well, because the voice recordings constitute personal data, so we'll only keep that for as long as we need to finalise those transcripts. We'll be link anonymising the data. This can get quite technical and I can go into it at a later point if people are interested, but it means that the research data itself on the transcripts will be anonymous, but the research team will be able to link back to the contact details on a participant's consent form via a participant number. And we would use this primarily if a participant wants to withdraw their data from the study. So they would give their participant number, we could track that back and then delete that data. So for the avoidance of doubt, participants will not be identifiable in the research transcript or in any subsequent analysis or publication. And I said earlier that one of the aims of the focus groups is that we hope that they'll give you the opportunity to capture the nuances among your own institution's researchers on this topic. We will share a copy of the finalised transcript for your institution with you as soon as it is available. And you can then use that to prompt further discussion or action around this subject as is most useful within your own context. You don't need to wait for that for data to be published. We will send you your transcript anonymised. And I just wanted to finish with a personal note, really. I'm really excited that we've got this opportunity to work with you all, not only to generate research data for the project, but to put the researchers at the centre of the conversations around engagement with non-academic organisations, and perhaps to open some of those researchers up to new ways of thinking about the opportunities within their amazing work. I can't wait to get started. And I'm going to hand over to Ruby at this point. Thanks, Ruby.
Thanks, Kate. I'm going to talk a little bit about the application and selection process. So in terms of who it's open to academics, research developers and other staff supporting PGRs and ECRs, specifically based in HE institutions in England. And that is just because our funding comes from Research England, and so we can only transfer it to others who have got eligibility to receive Research England funding. The funding can be used to cover room hire, refreshments, equipment hire, staff time where those staff are specifically employed to support the focus groups, reasonable travel expenses, by which we mean if it's not the participant's usual place of work or study, you could cover within your usual institutional policy their expenses for getting there. And then incentives for participants. We've included again here in line with institutional policy. We've given some guidance that reflects our policy at Exeter, but we're aware that it might differ in different places. So what we'd like you to do on your application is essentially budget for what would be your usual practice on this, and just add a note on there for us about that. The deadline to apply is the 30th of May at 12 noon. And the application form is fairly straightforward. It covers motivation and what you think your institution might get out of running these groups and any insights you might be hoping to use. The logistics of running the group, so things like recruiting to the groups, facilitating where you might host the groups, and then some budget and legal and finance details. The majority of the legal and finance details we've kept as optional, and these are mainly to speed up the contracting and invoicing process. So if you don't have them at the time of application, that's okay. We would just then ask for them at the point of accepting an award, but they are there on the application form. So if you do know them, it would be great to have them at the time. In terms of selection, the panel will consider your plan to recruit to and run the focus group, and then also the potential of your institution to broaden our evidence base because of its location, its type. So, for example, if it's a small and specialist institution or a research intensive one, and the size of the institution. Outcomes will be communicated via email in early June, so as soon as possible after the applications have closed, really. And once we receive confirmation from you that you'd like to accept the award, we'll start the process of sending out legal contracts for signature and organising the transfer of funds. Recruiting to focus groups can only start once those contracts have been signed, just because there's details in there to do with kind of data protection, etc. as well. From our perspective, the focus group should take place as soon as they possibly can after contracts have been signed. Ideally, this would be in late June or July 2025, depending on how long the contracting process takes. But if you think that might be problematic, particularly in view of the summer break, please just include in your application when you think you're likely to be able to run this focus group, so we've got that information available too. And finally, if you do have any questions, please do just reach out to our team. The team inbox is going to be on the next slide, and we're very happy to help, and it's also really useful learning from our perspective as well. That's it from me, so I'll hand back over to Alison, and I think we've got plenty of time for some questions.
Thank you, Ruby, and thank you, Kate, for such detailed consideration of the process and how we're going to do this. So there have been a few questions in the chat. Some have been answered by our team, so thank you. There's one from Abdullah. Can data collected be used for research purposes, including publication? And I'm assuming here you mean used by yourself rather than by us, because of course we are using it for research purposes and potentially publication ourselves. Kate, I wonder if you could come in with some clarification around that.
Yeah, we, as I said, we'll send you the finalised transcript so that you can use that within your institution to inform your own practice. But we would ask that if you want to use that within your own research and with your own publication, you would need to ask for permission from the DBAA team specifically, because obviously it's going into that project findings, and we would need to have some consideration around that. So it's not a definite no, but we need some further discussion around the specifics.
Yeah, and thank you, Kate. And I think in the guidance that we will give you in terms of how you frame and explain the focus groups to participants, that would add a whole other dimension. We are clear about how we will use the data for research purposes, but that would need some further thought in terms of how you might use that as an individual. So it might just complicate it a little bit further. There's another question from Tariq. Why is recording of the focus group needed? Some people may be reluctant when they know they're being recorded. Just note-taking will not serve the purpose. So Kate, again, I wonder if you could just confirm why we need to record.
Yeah, we've been recording, we've run a couple of focus groups already. We find that recording, you capture those nuances, those detailed exchanges, you can capture the mood of the room more than you can with some written notes. I completely understand that some people may feel reticent to join in conversations where it's being recorded. One of the reasons we've put the focus group at 90 minutes to 2 hours is to enable people to have that space to get more comfortable within that group and then to participate. And it's really important to make sure that people have seen the information, the participant information sheets in advance, because that will specify that the sessions are being recorded. And if people don't feel comfortable with that, then I think they probably wouldn't sign up to be involved. I think, sorry, one of the other nuances around that is because the analysis is being done at a distance, so it's being done by Exeter, we're not going to be in the room, we're not also going to have the memory of what that group felt like in terms of picking up on the mood and things. So as much detail as we can have as possible to prepare those transcripts is going to be really useful.
Yeah, and to emphasise to the participants that everything will be anonymised. So as Kate said, we have to have a way of tracking back in case people decide they want to withdraw parts of things that they might have said, but it will be fully anonymised. I hope that answers that question. And yes, to confirm to Andreas, I know Felipe's come in to confirm, this is about postgraduate research students, so people who are undertaking PhDs, and also early career researchers, so postdocs, and it can be anyone who would define themselves as an early career researcher in that respect. So it's not dependent on age, it's not dependent on a certain number of years out from completion of a PhD. If people feel that they are at an early career researcher stage, then they are welcome to join this. So we're quite flexible in that respect. There's a question around, is there a list of focus group questions that we can see, and can we add our own questions? So again, I'm going to come back to Kate to provide clarity on that one as well.
Thank you. So we do already have a list of focus group questions, and we've used them in a couple of events already, and those questions do have ethical approval. We'll release the full set because there are some sub-questions within that when we release the funding. But at a general level, they're looking at those thematic areas, so the barriers, the enablers, and the motivators of engaging with non-academic organisations, and there are some sub-questions within under each of those headings. In terms of adding your own questions, I would say not for the part of the session that relates to the DBAA project, because we want to have parity across those, but we are happy that you keep those researchers in a room if there are institution-specific questions that you then would like to ask. We'd be interested to know what those questions are for our own interest, really. But you can have your own conversations with your researchers in that room once the recording stops. We then wouldn't be involved in any of that because we don't have the ethics approval. I think that's the key thing. All of our questions have had to be approved. And there's quite a delay. If we then add extra questions onto that data set, it adds on at least 3 weeks in terms of the timeline. So we would say no to adding the questions to our set, but you could continue the focus group beyond the end time of the DBAA section if you wanted to.
Great, thank you very much, Kate. So the question I can see here, or rather an observation, an offer from Lucy in the chat at UCL is around sharing some learnings. We would absolutely love to connect with you. We are already in touch with some of your colleagues at UCL. We know you do some fantastic work there. So if you send us a quick email to our DBAA email account, I will respond directly to you, Lucy, and follow up how we can take that forward. Okay, have I missed any other questions in the chat, or is there anyone that would like to raise a hand and ask a question?
I would like to raise a hand, please.
Kate is coming. Kate, go on, Kate.
Because I've realised we've given you all this information and we have not told you the amount of the awards. So we are offering up to 20 awards of £2,500. That's the funding pot that we have. You can apply in to receive one of those £2,500 grants.
So as you will discover if you look at the documentation, and we're happy to discuss in more detail if you would like, that has to be fully costed. So you have to set out exactly what you would like in terms of what running a focus group will cost you down to the specifics. And that can be up to, but it does not need to be that full amount. And indeed, if we once we get the applications, we feel that there are some adjustments that could be made, we will come back to you and have that conversation. Okay, so Danny is coming in, academic from University of Manchester, I presume, who has since set up a small facilitation research business. We're already a recommended supplier. Is there scope for a business to support successful universities with facilitation and management? I think, Kate, we are open to external facilitators being brought in to support universities with this, and that could potentially be part of the costing.
Yes, so we're happy for institutions to hire their own external facilitators. That's not something that we would be coordinating from the centre. That would be at the discretion of that individual university. So there's nothing to prevent that, but it's a conversation that you would need to have with the individual institutions about whether they would like to bring you in, because the application needs to come from the institution.
Yeah, and just to emphasize again that this is very much, we're looking for institution specific focus groups here. We've had some queries from people wondering if they could join up with other universities and run these, and for the moment we do want these to be individual. Depending on the results and once we've analysed the data, we do anticipate that there would be potential other focus groups that we might run. They might be looking at particular regions, they might be looking at particular disciplines. So we are open to potential other focus groups that might usefully feed into our evidence base, but they won't be part of this particular call, which is very much an institution specific level call. What was the minimum we had to recruit? I think we've set our minimum as, was it 20, Kate, up to 30?
Yes.
Or Ruby, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for optimum discussion, you would need to have from 20 upwards, you'd 3 tables of 7, 2 tables of 7 and a 6, you know, but to have those, I think if you have smaller groups, it becomes quite difficult to sustain that conversation, and people feel under quite a lot of pressure to keep contributing. So we would aim for 7 to 10 in a group, please.
Yeah, and as Kate said earlier, very much want a spread of disciplines. So there may be a whole range of different people who are ideally placed to lead on one of these applications. We are anticipating quite a lot of interest from researcher developers who would sit in a central position, but you are very welcome to apply if you sit within other team within a particular discipline, but feel that you would have that capability of recruiting people from a broad range of disciplines. And we want that assurance in the application that you are in a position to be able to do that. So it's really important to think about how you would publicise and recruit to the groups. Is it okay to run smaller groups at separate times, one on campus and another at another campus? Oh, I'm not sure we've thought about that. Ruby, Kate, do you want to come in with an opinion on that?
I think that's absolutely fine as long as it's the same institution. You'd need to give consideration to your facilitators, your note takers, and still be able to meet those sort of ethical considerations around consent and having that really controlled. But it's not exam conditions. I don't think there's any risk that if somebody else knows about one of the questions in advance that it's going to skew, so that would be fine.
Thank you. And Ruth, just to clarify, within business school disciplines, no, absolutely not. So we are working across all disciplines as a project. We're based in a business school, but we are absolutely looking to support. And in fact, we feel that the support from the project is much more likely to be needed outside of business school disciplines. So you can run it, you can facilitate it if you're sitting within a business school, but you would need to be confident that you could recruit across the sciences, across the humanities, wider social sciences, for example, depending on the institution that you are at. So yeah, that broad voice of people from across every discipline is really important. Okay. I think we've captured all the questions. Anyone else want to come in verbally with a question? Yeah, and Anna, thank you for confirming you're a careers consultant for researchers. We have connected with quite a lot of people in your sorts of role. Again, we would anticipate that you would be ideally placed because you would have that reach across disciplines as well. Yes, recording, all being recorded, will be circulated to you if you've enrolled or registered for the webinar. That will be sent out directly to you. Can we supplement your questions with some institution-specific questions? Kate, again, do you want to come in on that, about the opportunity beyond?
We're not able to invite people to supplement the DBAA section of the focus group with institution-specific questions for the reason that every question has had to be approved by our ethics committee. And if we start to add new ones in across 20 partners, that's going to be another sort of 20 amendments to the ethics approval, which will really delay matters. We'd be really interested to know for our own interest what your own questions might be. And the advice that we're giving is that we're absolutely fine once the DBAA section of that focus group closes, that you can carry on with your own conversations to answer some of those questions, but we would ask that that recording is stopped. We don't want the data from that, please, or we'd love it, but it's not covered by our ethics. So please don't send us that data. You would need to cover that off with your own ethics approval for your own institution.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Kate. And hopefully, you know, by offering them a little bit of a networking space and some refreshments as part of this, that will tempt people in, and that you will be able to get some really good conversations going once the DBAA part of the focus group has ended, as Kate said. Okay, I think that's all the questions, unless anyone suddenly thinking of anything else. Was there, Evie, would you like to come in to speak?
Oh, yeah, just a really quick one. I'm just thinking the timelines are quite a tight turnaround. If we don't get the funding confirmed till June, we can't really advertise it until then. So would it be acceptable to run these slightly later in the year, sort of September time?
I'm going to turn to Kate, but I would emphasise that we would like the data as soon as possible. I realise that the proposed timelines are quite tight, but we really want to turn the project into developing provision as soon as we can. I would say that my advice would be try to get things moving as quickly as you possibly can, but we are open to conversations around pushing that date if it's absolutely impossible to do it earlier. Kate, that's in line with what we've spoken about?
Yes, exactly that. Thank you. We'd like it done over the summer if possible, but acknowledging that that's not always possible, we're open to a conversation in your own context to try and find what would be possible.
But just to confirm, hopefully we've done a lot of the work for you. I know there are always unanticipated bits of complexities that we have to deal with when we're organising anything within a university. But if you are successful, we've completed the paperwork. I would hope that really the main concern that you would have is just finding a space and recruiting to something, and that you would quite quickly be able to put something together, because you're not having to think about the ethics, you're not having to design the question set and so on. So whatever we can do to make these as easy as possible for you, I think that's what we're saying. You know, if you need our support in any way, then please do reach out.
Thank you. And did you say when you would get the funding confirmed?
I think it was early June, wasn't it, Kate? Okay. We're looking at a timeline.
It's
I think
June,
this is Ruby, yeah.
So the applications close at the very end of May, and then we hope to sort of be in touch within a week of that, so the first week of June.
Great, thank you.
Okay, right. I think we have now got to the end of any questions. If anyone wants to put their hand up for a last question. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you very much for your interest. Even if this is not the opportunity for you, then if you could share within your own networks in case there are others that might be interested. And also, as I said, just connect with us by signing up to our mailing list would be fantastic, because it will enable you to stay abreast of all the work that we're doing and future. There will be a lot of other funding calls that we're going to be putting out over the next 6 months or so. Of particularly opportunities in terms of designing and supporting us with some of the training provision and resource creation, but also the networking as well. So we are looking to distribute more funds over coming months, and there may be other opportunities that you can tap into there. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day. I hope the sun is shining as much as it is down here in Devon, wherever you are. And do please reach out if you've got any further questions that occur to you after we end the call. You've got our email address on that final slide as well. But thank you for coming.